It's Taco Tuesday!
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Taco here, back on another Tuesday. I've been grinding New World at almost every free opportunity that I have, doing town boards, the main and side quests, and then running portals to level up as quick as possible. But one of the most enjoyable experiences outside of PvP so far for me has been the expeditions. I shared the first expedition in my New World review, which was the Armine expedition, but today I'm going to cover the Starstone Barrows dungeon. I served as a guide for this run for some first timers, so I figured I would share some tips for you guys that maybe haven't tried it yet or want to run it in a more efficient manner. I'll be playing a mage DPS role as part of our 5-man, but this dungeon, similarly to the first one, doesn't really have differentiated responsibilities for the different roles, being a healer, tank, or DPS, compared to Depths, which is the next dungeon that I'll cover in my next video. If you have been enjoying the New World content, hammer the like button and subscribe if you haven't. So let's get right into it. Starstone Barrows you'll come across as part of the main storyline once you've crafted the orb that allows you to enter the dungeon. Now, the recommended level for this is 35, but I've come across people in their upper 40s and even 50s running this dungeon either for the repeatable quest or just to help their friends out. But I think, you can probably enter this around 32 or 33 if you are with a higher level squad. But I still think it'd be worthwhile to wait until you have the orb and doing it as part of the main storyline. Similar to Armine, by talking to Barkimedes outside of the dungeon, you'll be able to gain a repeatable quest that's going to give you XP after repeating it that first time. The loot for this dungeon was highlighted at the start of the video, and it will be highlighted before you enter, but it's going to be a necklace, a fire staff, a rapier, ice gauntlet, and then a hatchet. I actually have gained all of these drops within 4 or 5 runs, and I would only recommend you doing this maybe 4 or 5 times in terms of just being efficient and the XP being worth it. I actually am using the fire staff and ice gauntlets that I unlocked through this dungeon since I am a mage or a caster, and then additionally my gear equipped is largely from this dungeon, which is pretty dope. I think it looks similar to some of the minor bosses or the gold bar mobs that you're going to fight throughout this dungeon, and it has almost this Osiris or Egyptian style, which I think just looks pretty sweet. Now, for the Starstone Barrows, one of the main added mechanics with this dungeon are going to be these lasers that will instantly kill you if you touch them. Even if you go down, your teammates are going to be unable to res you or revive you, and you're going to have to respawn back at the last checkpoint. Throughout, there are going to be timed lasers that you can run past or roll by basically just doing it at the right time. The main part is there's going to be this parkour section a few minutes into the dungeon that I've seen a lot of people struggle with. I'll show you the path that I use to get through. I'm sure there are other methods, but this one works pretty well and it's fairly easy. Another element to the lasers though is that there are these protection areas where if you interact with them, you're going to be able to hold a staff that gives area security for your teammates, essentially disabling the lasers, and it's going to allow your squad to pass through. Now, this is going to be useful for several different parts of the dungeon. Similar to the first expedition, you're going to want your tank to lead your squad through this dungeon, triggering aggro for as many mobs as possible and just grouping them up. Now, the biggest mistake that I've seen is people will attack mobs prior to the tank getting aggro, which really just makes clearing out certain areas longer and more difficult than necessary. Mainly, you'll see me casting from afar, doing AoE damage right around the tank. If you're a caster or you have a range or mage build, you're really going to want to do the same. Throughout, there's going to be rare mobs or gold bar mobs. The only challenging part that I think is worth mentioning is midway through this expedition, you'll run across a mob called Erebos, and Leanne, I think is how you pronounce it. The key here is just to focus your DPS on Erebos, which is the mage, since they're going to have the ability to spawn mobs as soon as you clear out the wave. Now, his attacks are a bit annoying. He has both a shockwave proximity attack that does significant damage, and then a range attack by basically sending out these orbs that if you are in contact with, they'll damage you, which just makes it even more important to focus your damage and DPS on him before really engaging or focusing on the mobs or Leanne. Speaking to Starstone Barrows overall, it is a pretty simple but fun expedition. I do think it's an upgrade from Armine in terms of its design and difficulty. I think the addition of the lasers can make for some frustrating and pretty funny moments, especially if you're running with people who are doing it for their first time. Surprisingly, by doing this around level 35 or even a few levels higher, I think the rewards do scale pretty well for a handful of levels. So you'll actually get some use out of these gear or the weapons that you gain rather than just salvaging them or discarding them for the next available gear set or weapon. The final boss is always going to be the best and most challenging part of these dungeons. Grungol the Regent is the final boss, and he matches that skeleton mob design that you encounter throughout this dungeon. He's going to offer a few different attacks that you have to watch for. In the first round or wave, your tank is going to take on his aggro with everyone else doing DPS from a distance, or if you're melee, attacking him from behind. He has a sword that he swings that has a decent bit of range, but if you're doing melee, it's going to be easy to dodge or sidestep his attacks. The main mechanic that he's going to use is throw bones in the area of those doing DPS from a distance, and you'll see he throws them towards me throughout my time in this fight. In the first wave, it will be a single bone. This bone, once it hits the ground, is going to spawn mobs, and it will continue to until it's destroyed. The DPS members are going to want to focus on the bone, destroying it as quick as possible and eliminating the mobs. Once you defeat him once, he is going to respawn for the second and final round. In this wave, he's going to jump across to the various members in the room on his impact with the ground, sending shockwaves that are going to do damage as they hit you. This is the part where I usually see people struggle or go down because they don't understand that they need to time dodge the shockwave. My best advice is to time your dodges, but also have healers place those healing circles and sit in them as much as you can during this phase. You will actually out heal the damage of his impacts. If you have ice gauntlets like myself, using Entomb for this stage is pretty clutch because you will be immune to any damage. The only difference in this second wave compared to the first is rather than one bone, he's actually going to throw 3 consecutively, which is going to create a bit of chaos. You're going to want to focus the bones and the mob and then go back to DPSing him. Other than that, it's a pretty simple and quick boss fight if you can eliminate the bones quickly and just do significant DPS. That's going to pretty much wrap up this dungeon. I hope you guys found this guide and my tips helpful. I'll share my guide for the Depths Expedition, which is the next expedition, in my next video. I'm working on PvP and leveling at the moment, and I'm really just trying to catch up to level 60 so I can actually participate in wars, invasions, and just the greater endgame content. If you guys enjoyed the video, hammer the like button for me, and until next Tuesday, I'm out.